Hey everyone, my name is Brandon Culp, and today I want to talk to you about web accessibility. So to start, I just want to go over a quick overview of what I want to talk about today. So obviously, what is web accessibility? And then talk about some general guidelines for making your websites accessible. And then I want to talk about the different types of disabilities that people have and how they might browse the web and how that might be different than how you or I browse the web. And then I also want to talk about Anyang, which is a cool library that I've been working with lately that lets you control your site using your voice. And then finally, I want to briefly cover some additional libraries and other tools that you guys can use today to make your site more accessible and kind of show you that it's not as hard as you might think. So first off, what is web accessibility? So it is basically the process of removing barriers that present interaction with for like anyone with a disability. So basically that they have equal access to the site and the information and the same functionality that someone without a disability might have. And something that's interesting is there are actually these web content accessibility guidelines, which are basically a single shared standard for web accessibility. So they have some principles and testable criteria that you can basically match your website against to see how accessible it is. So up here on the screen, we basically just have the main different types of disabilities. So we have a physical disability, so someone that was born without a limb or maybe has a temporary injury or develops arthritis throughout their life. We have a cognitive disability, so someone that maybe has difficulty reading or spelling. And then we have a hearing impairment, so someone that's hard of hearing, as well as someone with visual impairment, so either someone that's colorblind or completely blind. So some of the tools these people might use to access the web, so for a physical disability, maybe like speech to text, cognitive, like text to speech or error correction software. For hearing, like closed captioning or basically a transcript of a video. And then for someone with a visual impairment, a screen reader or a browser that allows you to use your keyboard instead of a mouse. So some general guidelines to keep in mind when you're thinking about your own websites and making them accessible. So can your site be accessed using a screen reader? So one of the big things here is having alternative text for images and giving your links unique and descriptive names. Can you use a keyboard to access things? So is it solely clicking, or can you just use a keyboard to move around the site? Is your DOM properly set up? So do you have like the proper semantic structure? So are your headings set up right? Can you access the site in high contrast mode? And then my favorite, smart forms. So can you fill out the forms, not only using a keyboard, but can you also use your voice to fill them out? And I like this quote down here at the bottom, basically just something to keep in mind if you think about accessibility. There's really no way to make your site completely accessible to every single person out there, so it's a good idea to just think about your target audience and focus on a couple disabilities. So our focus today is going to be on physical and mobility impairment. So again, someone that has a temporary injury or was born without a limb, something like that. And how I want to kind of display that is with Anyang, which again is this lightweight library that just utilizes the Google Web Speech API so that you can navigate the site using basically pre-planned commands that you input. So basically you just have these commands and then they map to functions. So whenever the API recognizes the command, it'll just execute that function. So I recently made a Jeopardy game, as some of you know, for Stackathon, and so I just want to show that real quick. So here is the Jeopardy game, and you can, start a game, but you can also use your voice. So go back, start game. Movies 200. Gal Gadot. Who is Gal Gadot? Next question. College sports 400. Let's see. I think it's who is Archie Griffin? Next question. And then finally, places 200. What is Boston? Oh, no, that's not right. What is Cincinnati? Next question. Next question. So that's the basic functionality. Pretty simple. Again, I just have commands set up, and they're just going to execute and pull up the questions. And as you can see, if you get the question wrong, it'll just sit there and be like, it's obviously not right. Or for the sticklers for Jeopardy, who it has to say who is or what is, that's in there as well. So some additional resources I want to talk to you guys about for you using in your daily life to make things accessible. So there's Ally.js, which is basically it will analyze your site and tell you which DOM elements can be accessed using a keyboard, and that's one of the biggest things for people is moving beyond just the mouse functionality. And then we also have Quail.js. So that's a jQuery plugin that provides over 200 tests. So as you're doing your TDD, you can also write tests for accessibility. And again, you can make your own tests. So again, think of your audience and tailor those tests for them. And also something that's cool with that is that actually includes the web content accessibility guidelines. So the version like 1.0 and 2.0. So you'll actually know those guidelines and be able to meet those. And then, of course, there's a dev tool, Chrome dev tool for accessibility. So that'll do the basically the checking in live time of your site and tell you right on the page, what is accessible and how you can make improvements. So just to wrap up, some things to keep in mind. So 20% of the population has some kind of disability. So maybe you or I don't have one, but a lot of people do, even if it's just color blindness or something like that. So if you're not designing your website to be accessible for them, you're missing out on a large chunk of the population. And also, web accessibility benefits a lot of people. So kind of like I just showed you, a library like that is pretty cool and doesn't have to be just for someone with a disability. One of the things with accessibility is making your site flexible for multiple people in multiple situations. So even if it's just someone that has a slow internet connection, making sure that they can still access your site the way that you want them to. And then finally, the UN Convention on the Right of Persons with Disabilities recognizes access to information and communication technologies, including the web, as a basic human right. So something to keep in mind, with the current election, that everyone deserves the same basic rights and to be treated equal. So that includes people with disabilities. So these are some resources I used. I encourage you to check out Anyang. It's a really cool library, and also to start adding some sort of accessibility into your projects. Thanks.